Okay. All right, let's roll. Again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You have arrived to the Zoom webinar and application clinic for the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. And hopefully this is going to be a helpful resource for you as you navigate the application process for this opportunity. First and foremost, let's do some introductions. Hi, my name is Molly Curley O'Brien. I am the Director of Government Affairs for Rebuild North Bay Foundation, but more importantly, I'm the project manager for the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. The other two folks that you're going to be hearing from tonight are Jason Wells. He represents the Resource Conservation District in Sonoma County and Gold Ridge, and also Amanda Benton from Napa County Resource Conservation District. I'm going to be kicking us off by doing all the basic high level stuff, and then they are going to be addressing the more interesting part of the event, and presumably the reason why you are all here, the Q&A. And we're going to try to get through these slides as fast as possible to get to that piece of the webinar as soon as possible. So what we're going to be really doing tonight is just talking about what the high level North Bay Forest Improvement Program is, who the partners are, where this money is coming from, and what the goals of this whole program are. I'm going to talk about the timeline of what this looks like for you all if you decide to submit an application and how it moves forward. Again, we're going to help you navigate the website. We're going to review some additional helpful tools that might be of use to you as you figure out this application process, in addition to the resources that are going to be made available to you tonight. Talk about eligibility and talk a little bit about forest management plans and what resources are available specifically around that. And of course, go through the Q&A. I'm not quite sure why that's not moving. I'm going to stop my screen really quick and try and get to the next slide. I
guess I'll just recommend that you choose to share the presentation rather than your screen, because sometimes I've noticed Zoom has a hard time showing certain things when you're just on your window rather than like the presentation. That's my guess.
Jason, I don't know what you mean by that.
When you share your screen in Zoom, it will usually give you an option to like choose which thing, or maybe I'm confusing this with one of the myriad of other programs that we use to screen share, but I could have swore that it'll ask you whether or not you want to like show a program or a window or your screen. Does that sound crazy?
No, that's how it works for me.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry, everybody, while we're going through this technical difficulty. I'm just seeing the option to share the screen as it is, and then I can go into play from current slide.
Well, it seems like we can see your screen right now. So
all right, we're going to go through. Thanks, everybody. While we do this, we're just going to make this a little bit bigger for you. And oh my gosh.
So it doesn't work if you hit play from current slide? There we go.
Well, we'll see if it happens again.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks for hanging in there. So again, who is part of the North Bay Forest Improvement Program? Rebuild North Bay Foundation. I'll also say that we are currently now, as of 2 weeks ago, doing business as another organization called After the Fire. I make that known because the website and how we navigate it will look a little bit different, and I'm just going to go through that. But you will still be hearing from me as the project manager of the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. The other resource conservation districts that are involved are located in Sonoma, Mendocino, Napa, and Napa counties, and the Clear Lake Environmental Research Center. So these two entities, the resource conservation districts and clerk, are your more direct lines of communication around what an application process, or, you know, if you are selecting moving forward, working with a forester from the organization, from the RCD or clerk, depending on where you are located. And then of course, our another partner is CALFIRE. We are receiving the $1.5 million through Proposition 68 through funding from them to be able to do this whole thing in service for the 4 counties, which is really exciting. And it's exciting because this is a cutting edge, innovative landowner and incentives pilot program. This is a first in its kind thing. So as you can just tell from how we were figuring how to do the slides, we are learning as we go too. And this is a big part of the partnership process and in the spirit of collaboration, working together in that regard. But in addition to, you know, why it's cutting edge and that it's new is that it's, you know, really serving, there's a focus around disadvantaged communities where the incentive payment is going to be larger. And then in the non-disadvantaged communities in Sonoma and Napa, this incentive payment is 68%. So what that all means is that this program is providing financial cost shares for landowners to conduct critical work to treat wildfire hazards on private properties through the counties that we're involved in: Lake, Mendocino, Napa, and Sonoma. And in addition to that, this program is supporting the planning and implementation of projects on private forest land to reduce the risk of wildfire and promote forest health. So that's like the gist, you know, that's the soapbox description of what NorthBay Forest Improvement Program is all about. In terms of like, what does this mean for me? What does this actually look like in real life? You are all here because you heard that an application is going to be due September 30th, 2021 to see if you might be eligible and could move forward with this opportunity. The application review, once everyone submits by September 30th, will be reviewed it's about 6 weeks between October 1st and November 15th. Notification of decisions going to be communicated by November 30th to see whether or not you're going to be moving forward in this process. Landowner contracts after that will be distributed by January 30th. Now, I will also say that, you know, depending on what all this looks like moving forward and depending on the specific needs of this project, this timeline might not look exact, but I think it's a good idea for you to have a fairly general picture of what this might demand. Projects can start after contracts are signed and then completed 365 days after contracts or after the contract date. So like I said, you may know someone who submitted their application on the first batch and it was under a Rebuild North Bay website. Like I said, we are now doing business as after the fire. And so I wanted to just give you the visual of what you're going to do to try to find the application. Before I go into these steps, I just want to make myself available. If there's any reason why this in the moment feels hard to find, you can always reach out. My contact information is on a slide. And of course, this is being recorded and we will send this information out to you afterwards. So no fear. And if this comes, tomorrow comes and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. But first and foremost, after the fire, USA.org is where you want to go first. And then you're going to go to our programs before the fire, North Bay Forest Improvement Program. And you can just click that. And then you will find all of the different resources, what the North Bay Forest Improvement Program is. Am I eligible? How do I apply? The actual application, frequently asked questions, and contacts. Luckily, all this stuff is more or less we're going to be assessed tonight, so we don't need to go into any more detail than that. But again, if you have any more questions about the website, I'm available to problem solve that with you. Oh, okay. In addition, we wanted to provide a couple of more helpful tools to further assist you when navigating the application process. And again, we will make sure that these slides go out to all the folks that are in attendance tonight so that you can have the hyperlinks to all of this, to all of these resources that are made available. And these helpful links are going to be very specific to your application, and Jason and Amanda will go over those. In addition to that, there's a project ranking to be able to to be able to find out more information about what these projects could potentially look like. And of course, the frequently asked questions that I showed you on the previous slide. In addition to that, Jason Wells has taken the lead and filled out an application and recorded it for anyone to be able to access. We also have, since making that application video, have actually made the application even easier for folks to navigate. So when you utilize this resource and check out the video and you recognize that the application doesn't match up exactly, it's because we've since edited it. And if it's not feeling helpful, again, please reach out to me and I will try my best to answer those questions. And if they need to be a little bit more technical in spirit, I will connect you to the person within your county that makes the most sense. And I think, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Jason and Amanda.
Well, hi, I'm Jason Wells. I'm a forester for Sonoma and Goldridge Resource Conservation Districts, so covering Sonoma County. And just before I forget, just to add on there to what Molly was saying about the changes to the application. The major changes were essentially that we've become more specific about what it is that you would be filling out or asking for. So before we had just said something like, are you asking for money to thin? Or are you asking for money to pile burn? And now we're asking you essentially to be more specific. So we have our cap rates document, which is the payment rates and covered activities that there's actually a link for at the bottom of this. And it will say what the number is. So when you ask for, I want 5 acres of thinning, you're going to want to look at that payment rates and covered activity and see which one of those thinning practices most closely resembles what it is that you're asking for. That's really the only major change that happened in the application. So the video should be pretty good to get you through that process otherwise. Now back to what I'm supposed to talk about here is really just eligibility. So this is who can actually even apply for the program. At the most basic level, what you need to be is you need to be someone authorized to make decisions about the land. So that's either going to be the landowner or an authorized agent. That could be a forester or a land manager or someone who's in charge of a deed of a trust that's listed on that trust as that agent. The property needs to be forest land. And really the way that that's defined is that it needs to have 10% canopy cover, generally of a native tree type. So oak, woodland, redwood forest, mixed evergreen is really going to be like mixed to hardwood, conifer, Douglas fir, could be like ponderosa pine or something like that if you were in Lake County or parts of Mendocino County, or there's sugar pine actually in certain coastal areas too. So those are all applicable. Property has to be between 5 and 500 acres of forest land. So that's pretty hard set in the way that the program works. And that's one of the main reasons why we're asking when you apply that you're giving us all your APN information and letting us know that you fit within there. The other eligibility is that you didn't already receive Prop 68 funds from some other source. So mostly that was going to be through CFIP. But at this point, CFIP's not being funded by Prop 68. So you'll just need to talk to us about that if you have real questions on that. And then the other thing is that you can actually afford what your end of the bargain is going to be. So we don't go through the entire process of ranking and categorizing and figuring this all out and then come to find out that you can't really come up with what your end of the bargain is. So this is an incentives program. It's not intended to pay for the entire expected rate. And our payment rates that we've come up with have been based off of competitive bids that have been for projects in our local area over, say, the last 5 or so years. So they're reasonable, but you may not always find a contractor to give you exactly what those costs are. So this is that's something that you should also consider while you're signing up for this. So I guess the next slide, and I'm going to let Amanda take that one.
So that was, thanks Jason, and thank you Molly. Hi everybody, my name is Amanda Benton. I'm the Forestry Program Manager for the Napa Resource Conservation District. So applications, projects that are going to fall within Napa County, I will be the contact for you. And just want to talk a little bit, Jason, outlined very well the sort of letters of the law, and this next bit is a bit more about like the spirit of the program and what we're trying to do. So, all of us have been dealing with fire for a few years now, and it's a major concern, and we're all very, interested in keeping the forests healthy and resilient to wildfire. So we really are hoping to fund projects that are about continuing forest health. These aren't necessarily just emergency projects, putting in just emergency operations. This is about forest health and forest land treatment. So to that regard, we really encourage folks to have a long-term vision forest management plan or other guiding document that they've either prepared themselves through the use of a forest stewardship program with the UCCE or a registered professional forester. We'll talk a bit more about that if you don't have one, and what this program can and cannot offer as regards that. And then obviously California Prop 68 is also targeted at disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities. There's a link in these slides and also on the After the Fire website to identify where you fall within or near a disadvantaged community. The entire project area has to fall within, the entire property area has to fall within a disadvantaged or a severely disadvantaged community for that application to qualify. So just take a look, see where you are in the map. And then, yeah, it would not be, we're trying to help folks get projects and boots on the ground. So, projects that wouldn't necessarily be happening otherwise is the final point there.
Yeah, and so the disadvantaged community is a census designated sort of category based on what the median income for your census block is. And so as Amanda was just saying, that's a requirement for forest management plans that are funded through this program. And it also is being in a DAC is something that is going to allow us to give you a higher payment rate. So we will pay more as being in that DAC designation. But anyone can apply for our normal project rate for implementation dollars. And so some of the RCDs have other funding mechanisms that we can figure out how to get you a management plan. There's CFIP currently has funding right now. So that's the California Forest Improvement Program through CALFIRE. And they generally pay somewhere around $6,000. So if you qualify, which that's a question for the CFIP program, that may be another avenue to be able to get you a management plan. And then once you have that, you would be a better fit for working with us. Anyway, so just that's pretty much what the deal is with the DAC. And so there are a couple different mapping tools that are available. I've found the Parks one is easier, I think, but they both work. And so that'll help you get an idea for where your local disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged community is. Our program does not give further benefits for severely disadvantaged rather than disadvantaged communities. But yeah, if you fall within that area, we can work with you in this program to get you a forest management plan. So next slide.
So, types of projects, what does get funded here? I think the one point that sometimes gets lost in the mix is we really are focused on forested land. So not defensible space, not that 100 feet around structures. So, there are other funding opportunities, and your local RCD person might know about some of those. Your fire safe council is probably going to know about a lot of those. So I highly encourage you to reach out to those resources. This program is for forest health and forest projects, and that's that 10% canopy cover outside of the defensible space. So in those spaces, we do site preparation, which is like preparing the area for tree planting, and obviously actual collection of seedlings and planting of them and protecting them in reforestation efforts. And then forest stand improvements, which can mean a lot of things, such as what's on the screen here. We've got shaded fuel breaks, Doug fir encroachment. It's a native species around here. It absolutely has a place. It shouldn't probably have as big a place as it does in a lot of areas. So, there might be space for meadow rejuvenation and getting some of our oak woodlands back and getting some of the Doug fir out of there. And then, the thinning to reduce the stocking levels and the fuel loading and those ladder fuels, terms we've all become very familiar with lately. And then, any, also work that was maybe done under other programs, under, EQIP, which I think Jason mentioned, or CFIP, and dealing with some of the leftover hazardous bio issues that are the result of forest work.
So this slide, oh, gone too far. This slide here, I'm noticing that it says that you must have a forest management plan in place before applying. I'll say that that's true for Sonoma County based on the number, like the interest that we've received. But it's not that there's a hard requirement. You're just not going to rank high if you don't have all your ducks in a row and an understanding of what you're trying to do. The management plan is going to basically identify where you want to start. It's going to give you an idea. So I own 100 acres of land and I don't have 100 acres of land worth of money, right? So identifying your priorities, identifying where you're going to start work or how you're going to avoid sensitive species, identifying what sensitive species you might even have to worry about, identifying, it gives us the information that we as a, associated with public dollars coming from this grant program are going to be required to avoid sensitive species and other potential negative impacts to the environment, right? So it's pretty high up there on the list, but it's got an asterisk, which wasn't necessarily identified anywhere else, but I just wanted to point that out in case you're in some of the other counties like Lake or Napa. You might be able to work with the provider, so whether or not that's Clerk or Napa RCD, and we could see about how we can use this program to help meet your goals. But yeah, that gets an asterisk. You're going to be a much better candidate if you have a plan than if you don't. So, and if you're in the DAC, we can help you get that plan. So, we in that case could help hire a registered professional forester to prepare that forest management plan for your property. And having written forest management plans before, I think that the idea of having someone prepare a plan for you maybe is setting off on the wrong tone. This is really your plan, right? So you're going to work collaboratively with your forester to identify what your goals are, to identify what it is that you're trying to steer your forested stands towards for an end goal. And this program can help you meet what those management objectives are. So you can also work with USDA, which is what Amanda was just saying, is they have the EQIP program, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and they can help you write a forest management plan. Also, CALFIRE has their CFIP plan, or the California Forest Improvement Program. And then the University of California Agricultural and Natural Resources Office, UCANR, they've been putting on a workshop series to help landowners understand the basics of writing your own forest management plan. And they have the forest stewardship series, which is like a 25-part series that, seriously, if you read everything and understood it, you should earn an associate's degree in forestry. It's like really comprehensive information. They're a great resource also if you're unsure of a specific thing, like why are my trees being eaten by something, or what is this weird thing going on. UCANR is a great partner. So those are just some links there to help let you know that that's available as well.
Yeah, just, please visit afterthefireusa.org. All of the answers are going to be there as regards the application process. If you have, forest management questions, your RCD person is probably going to be able to answer some of those. Definitely reach out to registered professional foresters in the area, and we have resources that are available for that as well. But for application questions and answers, afterthefireusa.org, and then Molly is sort of the point person on that, but I think it's real clear now. So there's a video. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. And what I realized is we didn't necessarily make a clear process for how folks can ask their questions. I have a one to kick us off, but I am going to be monitoring both the chat for questions that all the individual questions there might be. And then I think that it's actually best to use the chat feature to have those, to funnel the questions in that way. And I will be reading them out to our esteemed panel of Jason and Amanda, and we can get your questions answered that way. So again, just go to the chat, start asking your questions, and I will kick us off. Amanda, you did kind of go over like what would be a good fit, but I'm hoping that you can speak a little bit more to that and just talk about, ideal projects that would be nice for you, that would be, great to work with in this next batch. And then maybe a little bit about what the projects that we're moving forward with, so that we can provide a little bit more real context to this opportunity.
Sure. So, as Jason and Molly both mentioned, like this is a pretty new thing for us as well. So we were really finding our feet as we were building this program, and we had it in our heads that like the ideal project size was going to be, a good project would be 20 acres, maybe $40,000 to $50,000. And we discovered that we're getting a much bigger range than that, but that's still going to be sort of our ideal project size. In terms of the amount of time and the contractor availability and the requirements for the work being done, that seems like a really good size to try and bite off in the time that you have to complete the project and get the work done. So I understand that people have bigger parcels or smaller parcels. It's not a problem to have a bigger goal in mind, but in terms of outlining the project for these funds, something around 20 acres is going to be really good. And then for the things that are going forward, there's a pretty big range. We've got roadside, ingress egress access roads, sort of fuel breaks along those, but there's also out in the woods doing forest stand improvement, thinning the structure of the forest, increasing the spacing between trees, and the canopy variability, along with species and size variability. I think, Jason, you got words of wisdom to add?
I like what you said. I mean, this is supposed to be a program that's more about forest health and forest stand improvement necessarily, and fire is a component of that. So obviously we're very concerned about and willing to help with fire. But on the opposite end, say that you just had a fire that came through your property and you're looking to do reforestation, we can help you pay for those costs. If you have sudden oak death on your property and you're concerned about that particular stand component, we can help you reforest in those areas and say, you know, like shift the stand composition from that tan oak or other, you know, problematic at this point sort of thing to something else that's growing there. I mean, we're also thinking about carbon sequestration and other kinds of forest values. So we're here to help with all of the different things that might be considered pre-commercial or non-commercial management.
Thanks, Jason. And just another quick process-oriented instruction. If you are on the phone tuning into this presentation, or for whatever reason cannot or don't feel comfortable using the chat function, just feel free to just pop in, you know, and unmute yourself so that we know that you are there and have a question, and we will address it that way too. We are in the vein of innovation and collaboration and partnership. This is us at work, so we are willing to meet you where you're at. But we have seen some questions come in. The first one is, how can we find out if we are in a DAC?
There are those two maps that were linked before, and you can go also on the website, and I believe it's under Am I Applicable? Let me see, because I'm on here. Am I eligible to participate? You can click on that, and then down lower there are two different links. One says Community Fact Finder, that's highlighted in blue, although it's talking about DAC the whole time. And the other one says DAC Mapping Tool. And either of those are going to bring up different, interactive maps that you can go to. And I believe that what you want to make sure with the DAC mapping tool, I have this written here under the California Water Board one, is to click on the Disadvantaged Communities Block Groups 2018 is the one that.
Jason, are you able to share your screen really quickly for the?
Interesting. I am doing this on the other computer. I have two computers in front of me, but hey, thanks to Amanda, I could do that. Let's do that. Let's pop over here. Where is my Zoom? I'll share my screen. Share my screen.
Thank you.
Boom. Got here. That's my email. That's so here we are on the After the Fire website under Am I Eligible to Participate? And so if you come down here, you see both of these actually are two different mapping tools. This is the one that I've got written here to go on to Block Groups 2018. So I'm going to go into this one. And hopefully that's the right one in my head, which is the good one. They're both fine. You can figure out if you're in the area. So now that you're here, and I have the Zoom window in my way, so let me move that out of the way. This says Disadvantaged Communities Block Group 2018. You hit that, you drop this about down, you come down here to Sonoma County. Woo, you get sad that we really don't have a lot of these areas. Oh, are you kidding me? Come on. Trying to work with a laptop here. Or if you are in Mendocino County, 90% of your county is covered. So, you know, this is the sort of thing that you'd want to look at. Basically, everything right now that's this pink or purplish color, you're going to be in, and you can check and see what those look like. So you've got disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities, and basically, if your property is contained within either one of those blocks, you are eligible for DAC.
And Jason, a follow-up question would be, can you plop in your address or your APN to get very specific on this map to confirm 100%, or is it more just a guesstimate that your property does exist within these lines that you're seeing?
Let's find out. How's about we type in here. Hey, there you go. So that's our office. That's the RCD office right there. And we are not in a DAC.
Okay. And again, we're going to be
We would've-
sending all, so these links are available in two separate resources. One first, it's through the website that Jason navigated you through, and then it'll be in the follow-up email with these slides around, and you'll find these maps in the eligibility portion. Thank you, Jason. You don't have to share your screen anymore. So the next question that we have from the group is, where to go? Can riparian areas be considered and eligible for fuel reduction treatment as well?
The program has basically, if you're going to operate in a riparian area, you're going to need to have a biologist survey that area before you go in there. And so generally, everything that we have with our program is scheduled to avoid disturbance. And so as a part of setting up this whole program, we went through and we looked at basically every threatened or endangered species that would occur in the four county project area, and identified the kinds of habitat types that they would have, and just how many different species are in riparian areas. The way that we're avoiding impacts to those species is we're generally maintaining a buffer zone. And I cannot remember the exact distance of that buffer zone off the top of my head, so I'm not even going to try. But unless you have a biologist basically look at the place and say, like, nope, I was there beforehand, you can't necessarily do work in those areas.
And if that's a specific question for anybody who's on the line here, we just encourage you to follow up for more specific advice from your RCD contact in the county that you live in. The next question is, if NRCS has made a plan for us that we ended up not using because we ran out of money with the rebuild, can we use that going forward with your program? We've gotten funds now from the Fire Trust and we'll be ready in December 2021.
Yeah, the EQIP plans, they're not going to expire necessarily. Now, the conditions on the lands might have changed, and that might mean that the management activities that were prescribed in the plan might no longer be applicable. So, as long as the conditions are going to still be the same, the thing that Jason was talking about, in that you don't necessarily have to have a forest management plan, but it really helps, is you basically still have to have all of the forest management plan boxes ticked. And this goes a little bit back to the last question too, in that all of these still have to be CEQA compliant. So all of the activities here are still going to, this isn't, some big exemption to the rules. We are still following all of the rules. And that means all of the rules set forth by forest management plans and the environmental quality folks. So this is just a funding stream for that. So we still have to check all of those boxes. If your plan is still applicable to your land, then it's still going to work for this program. Now, the CEQA items that you need to check for that might have changed some too. So it'll be sort of specific to you, but in essence, yes, the plan is still going to work.
Thanks, Amanda. Next question, how much does the NBFIP application overlap with a forest management plan?
Not at all. I mean, like they do, like your forest management plan. That's another nice thing about having a management plan, is it's going to have the answer to everything. So you should be able to go in your management plan and look up the answer to what it is that you're doing. Like, what's your APN? What is the section, township, range, public land survey system location of your property? Like, that's in a management plan usually. So you should be able to go and find that. Usually that information is on the first couple pages of your management plan. But just having a management plan doesn't like fill out the application for you. So that's how much it overlaps. Hopefully that answered that question.
Can you, and then the next, thanks, Jason. And then the next question is, can you describe a little more about what is included and expected in CEQA?
So
Do you know?
CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, is essentially a public accountability and reporting piece of legislation, right? So anytime a public agency authorizes funds or carries out and conducts a project, so it usually involves the construction of something or them going out and modifying the environment in some way, they are potentially subject to CEQA. The way that this program is handling CEQA is generally because the program activities that we are doing they fall within a certain subset of activities that is called a categorical exemption. So it's listed in CEQA as there are a number of activities that are specifically called out that say this is not generally going to be a major impact to the environment. Projects that are similar in nature to these projects are categorically exempt. That means you don't have to go through the environmental impact report process. That's really all that means. So if this were a project that was not exempt, that would involve a couple months of planning and a background scope and doing a cumulative impact report for all of the types of work and land use history that has ever gone onto the property. But because we're not under this program modifying mature and scenic trees, we're mostly dealing with understory vegetation or mid-level smaller stuff. A lot of the work that we're going to be proposing is going to be hand crew work. Those are minor alterations to land. And so as a function of running a categorical exemption, we can't mitigate any environmental impacts that would be expected from our activities. We have to avoid environmental impacts. So that's where the question about riparian areas comes up. Can I do work in a riparian area? Not unless you have some way of justifying how you are avoiding impacts. Until you have a survey, there's no way for me to know that there's not potential for a listed threatened or endangered species in that riparian area that we're going to go send hand crews in and go stomp around and chop down trees and stuff, right? So in that case, when we get to the point where there's a high likelihood of us running into some sort of listed thing, we would need an actual survey, and that's pretty much how I'm handling avoidance measures, right? So we're trying to not take listed species. So hopefully that answered that CEQA question.
And just a reminder, if it didn't, to be sure to reach out to at least me, and I can direct you to the person that would be most helpful for you. If any of these questions are just scratching the surface, that is why we are here. Another question came in through the hopper. Does your program provide a larger percentage of help that NRCS and, excuse me, there's two questions here. First question, does your program provide a larger percentage of help than NRCS?
In terms of cost share, it depends on what year you were working with NRCS, because our local NRCS office recently started offering rates for disadvantaged communities to everyone that they work with. So at this point, no. If you had worked with them 2 or 3 years ago, yes.
And I want to also, Molly, I know there's another part to that question, and I dropped a link to who the contacts are for everybody. And Jason's the Sonoma County one. But the piece I want to mention about the first part is, don't think that you can't work with us and NRCS. We very much want to be working together to increase the acres treated. You know, covering the same amount or the same land with both programs is not going to earn you as many points in the ranking, and you know, that'll just take some adjusting, because you're not, you know, supposed to be making money off of this. That is not the point. But by all means, if you have an, you know, NRCS plan and project going, you know, supplement it, add additional acres through the NBFIP program so that we can get more acres treated. That is everyone's goal.
Yeah, and we may need to track finances. So in general, our program works where you are able to go off and basically, if you were selected as someone that we wanted to be working with, we would come out to your property. We would verify that the conditions on the ground match what it is that you put on your application, and that you needed work and it met basically what you were applying for. Then the way the program typically works is you can go off and do whatever you need to do to meet the stipulations basically in the contract. Like, we want to see spacing of X number of feet between trees, and slash needs to be built in this particular way, whatever the contract specifically says. And generally we're going to have a hands-off approach on how you're handling that. That said, if you were trying to match with EQIP funds, we can't have a situation where the combined rates between EQIP and our program end up making it so that you paid nothing or that you made money on this incentives program. We're trying to incentivize private investment in forest land. So we'll just have to talk more about that, but that's something that we're very much trying to work into this program, is figuring out essentially how to match federal dollars with state dollars to stretch or extend the you know, that public funding to getting more work done on the ground and having a better public benefit.
Thanks, you two. Okay, the next question, the follow-up question, the other part of that question was in regards to what's the contact information for the Sonoma County person? And again, you can see all of that information, contact information, phone numbers, email, on the website, and Amanda has dropped that link, specifically that contact page, into the chat, so you can just use that as a reference to get a hold of Jason or whoever it is you're trying to get in contact with. The next question is, can a landowner do the work themselves?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, similar to I was just explaining the sort of the process once you're selected, how that works. So yeah, you know, that verifying agent would come out to your property. We would make sure that everything that you had said was valid. We would go through the list, we'd write up a contract, and then because we're paying set rates based on what the anticipated costs are, it's sort of an average, it's a guesstimate, right? Based on what previous costs and previous jobs in our region were costing. We've set that cap at, you know, 60 to 80% of what that anticipated cost is going to be. So we're not worried about necessarily those contractor costs at that rate. You're able to go off and do it, and those are competitive bids. So if you go off and do the work, we will pay you to do that work. I just want, you know, program wants to see that the work got done to the specifications, and then we pay based off of that.
Thanks, Jason. You know, before we go to the next questions that's in the chat, maybe we'll pause for a moment in case there's anybody who tuned in by phone, needs to make available to ask their question. Okay. Again, just chime in if there is a question that pops up. The next question is, once the work is completed and the work has been verified, how long does it take to receive payment?
So the coolest thing about this program is that we set it up as the revolving funds so that that process would be faster. So formerly Rebuild North Bay, now After the Fire USA is, fronting the money, and they are the ones getting repaid by CALFIRE. So they're the ones who are going to do the waiting. And since they're the ones who are going to do the waiting, you will get paid faster. But for specific timelines, Molly probably has the best idea.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stab at that. And I think that the reality is, in terms of timeline, is as soon as possible. You submit the invoice to Rebuild North Bay. So considering that After the Fire is a doing business as, and our nonprofit is still After the Fire, the contracts will, or excuse me, is with Rebuild North Bay. The contracts are going to be with Rebuild North Bay Foundation, and your check will be cut from a Rebuild North Bay Foundation account. But yes, you're absolutely right. So one of our contributions to this partnership is, in addition to the project management, is putting forward a $200,000 revolving loan fund so that we mitigate that waiting game between submitting your invoice to be reimbursed and actually being reimbursed. We haven't had an invoice for a landowner for a project completion yet, so I can't speak to what's happened already, but I can tell you that the goal is to get you paid as soon as possible once it's been verified. And that was the last question from the audience. We'll just hang out for a couple more seconds in case there's anybody on the phone who has a question, or if there's just a last burning question that you want to throw in the chat box really quick. And again, expect follow-up information regarding all of these resources that we commented on in a follow-up email. And of course, we have the recording of this application clinic for you that we will make available as well.
Can I throw out a question?
Yes, please.
So we're kind of underway on clearing trees that are dangerous and especially along a couple roadways up in the hills. And I'm thinking now there might be a few places for that we might want to add erosion control. Do these funds, or could we work with you on that, or is this strictly more of the forestry side?
We don't have an erosion control practice for this particular program.
Okay.
Those kinds of comments are that's helpful. And right now what we're doing is we're making a pilot program. So we're making a framework that hopefully we can find additional funding sources for, that we can tweak in the future to make more applicable to what people's needs are around here. We were threading a needle on this particular grant for what was an available practice that we could offer. And so right now we're just trying to do a proof of concept and get the gears rolling. And then, if we can continue to find funding that's more flexible and we could justify something like that, especially in a post-fire environment, I think that would be a great future practice.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for all the information tonight.
Absolutely. And Steve's question makes me want to reiterate another thing that I'm not sure actually if it is a reiteration. We're going to take a baseline when we get out there the first time. So this program isn't going to reimburse for work that was done before the project was approved. So make sure if you're applying, you don't start the work before you get approval.
Before you sign your contract.
Right.
That said, this is also something I will tell everybody ever. If you're interested in working with the government for getting money, don't think that you're going to get it necessarily tomorrow. And there's plenty of things that we don't cover, like defensible space. And so doing work around your house, if your intent is to reduce your fire hazard risk for structures, that's the most important thing you could be doing for that. In terms of vegetation management, there's home hardening and other kinds of things that you could be spending your money on, and other work as well. But we're not going to pay you to do defensible space. So if you are raring to go and you want to get something out there and get working on something, that's where I would say start that process while you're figuring out and applying for this money to be able to then expand from that home outward, right? So no sense waiting on that, because we are not going to we're not going to do work within 100 feet of a permitted structure. It's a forest health program.
Jason, do you cover chipping and burning too?
We do. Those are called follow-up on the payment rates and practices. So follow-up, the way the program is set up basically is there's the initial treatment or the forest stand improvement, right? So that's your thinning. And so those thinning categories are set up based on what the anticipated difficulty of thinning and moving that material is. It's assumed that the hazard reduction, meaning how you treat that material, is going to be lop and scatter. So that's built into the initial forest stand improvement payment rate, right? Just cutting it up and leaving it on the ground. Follow-up treatments like chipping or pile burning are additional payments that we're going to throw on there, assuming that you already did that sort of treatment. So that's the rate at which it takes to pick up all the sticks and put them in the chipper, or pick up sticks and pile them and then come back and then burn them. All those costs to being able to get you to a final product of that hazardous fuel has been reduced. There's also the one that I would say, just while I'm thinking about it right now, that might be like confusing, is that there's 2 spots for masticator treatments, one of which is on an initial treatment. And that's basically assuming that you ran through and did your primary cut, your forest stand improvement was done using a masticator or a forestry mulcher is what that might be. You might know that as. And so there would be no need for a follow-up treatment. You already did it. And we assumed those costs. And there's another treatment that would be for chipping / mulching or masticating, right? And so that's really applicable for, say, you were doing like a roadside shaded fuel break on steep slopes or something, and you couldn't get a masticator up there, but you had a masticator running along a road, like a boom mounted thing, and you had hand crews chopping it up, throwing it down, and then the follow-up treatment is them treating that material on the side of the road. So that was sort of what the estimations were in there. So that could be confusing because mastication is mentioned twice. And that's what's up with that.
Great. Another question came through. If I have already done a number of acres, can I apply for follow-up treatment of previously fell reduction work?
Yeah, if it was lop and scatter, and say you did that work through EQIP or something like that, that's actually, I think, a really good use of partnering with EQIP is we can pay to pile that material and burn it, which is just in general a better finished product treatment than lop and scatter. You can't get paid, obviously, if you thinned an area, we can't pay you to do the thinning work on something that you've already done. So say that you've got a 15-acre property and you thinned 2 acres and you were looking at 5 acres of total treatment area, we could pay you to thin the residual 3, and we could pay you to pile burn all 5.
The caveat I think we decided we had for that question though would be if it were a commercial timber harvest, that work was needed to be done under the commercial harvest.
So that wouldn't necessarily matter for the follow-up treatment. What we would need for a commercial harvest, so legally what you'd be required to do for a thinning, say you used an emergency exemption, you did thinning work on your property and you've got tops and branches and all that kind of stuff got left on site and you want that dealt with, we can pay you to pile burn that and reduce that hazard. But you need to have that harvest document completed with CALFIRE and done and like off the books, and there's no more commercial permit associated with the property. That needs to be dead. So that's sort of how that works. And our program is really only going to cut trees up to like 8 inches in diameter. So that's sort of the big difference there. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of other questions that have come in. Is follow-up chipping and burning covered at 68% too for Sonoma County? It sounds like I accidentally said 68% back then in the slides. I meant 60, my apologies, 60%. So I'm looking at you, Jason, for this question. Is follow-up chipping and burning covered at 60% too for Sonoma County?
Yeah, it's 60% if you're not in the DAC, and if you're in the 1 or 2 areas that are DAC, it would be 80%. So, and again, this is a capped rate.
Yeah.
So we looked at all these different costs of people doing similar projects, and if they said that it costs $2,000, we will pay $1,200 is 60%, right? So that's what we pay as a flat rate based on those costs. Now, if you go to Atlas Tree Company and you say, I want you to come in here and do this work, and Atlas Tree Company says, I'll do that for $5,000, you should look for a different contractor. If I were to make a recommendation, this is probably a good time to do it. If I was Googling companies to try and find someone to do this work, first off, you can always ask me, you could hit me up if I, or your local person would have a better idea of who's available. But if I were Googling who to do this kind of work, I would probably put in reforestation specialist or land clearance specialist, not an arborist. So arborists are generally insured for doing work around very expensive properties and with large trees, and they might take trees down, specialty type work, top rope rigging, that kind of stuff. You want somebody who's gonna do a quick and dirty run through, chop stuff up, move along, so reforestation specialist is a good one to look into. Those people are used to doing site prep, forestry work, that kind of thing.
A follow-up comment on that question, Jason, is that Atlas gave this person a bid for over $100K for 7 acres.
Yeah, because they're just not, they're not prepped for that kind of work. That's not what they generally do. They're the people that you see on the side of the road doing like 1 or 2 trees and chipping them and making it look really clean. That's another thing you're probably not going to see with some of the contractors that are going to give you these rates. It's not going to be like some guy with a push broom sweeping up chips and like taking them away. It's going to be like a tornado just came through, and yeah, hopefully it'll look cleaner than that, but it's not. They're totally different.
Great. Another question coming in. Any suggestion about getting rid of large Doug fir pieces felled by PG&E?
If you had acted early, you could have tried to sell that wood. You would have needed to contact a forester. You could have gotten an exemption, a salvage exemption, basically, for the work that was done from PG&E. I don't have good answers for how to handle large Douglas fir, large dead trees. Outside of timber harvesting, there's no markets in this area. There's not even like a biomass plant. There's no chip market. The closest thing you could do would be split for firewood. I would say don't transport firewood. So if you're going to sell any kind of wood or thing like that, do it close. You know, we've got all kinds of different forest pathogens and things like that, or use it yourself. If you have need for a deck or non-structural elements around your property, you could get somebody to come in and mill that for you. But yeah, I don't have good answers for dealing with dead trees.
I don't have any answers other than what Jason has said, except to say that I've seen a lot of, you know, post fire emergency work by PG&E, and I am not suggesting that we should all just turn a blind eye, but those big logs are not the fire danger that, you know, an overstocked forest is. Those big logs are 1,000-hour fuels. They're not going to ignite easily. So, you know, in terms of danger, they're not as bad as they look. I'll say that.
Yeah, if there was a rating bigger than 1,000 hour, they would have given it to that, because they're just not generally what carries a fire. It's usually small stuff. So
Great. You know, there's no more questions coming in other than something that kind of came up a little bit earlier around how to just get in contact and whether or not it's preferred to do email or phone. I'm going to go ahead and speak for everybody, for Amanda and Jason, Jason, I know that you responded in the chat that you prefer email, but for both of you and for the partners that were not able to participate tonight, please email us. Email is my preferred too, especially in these crazy COVID times that we're operating under. Email is going to be the easiest way to get a hold of us regardless of where we are working in that given moment. So please encourage email if that's a possibility, and if necessary, phone too.
yeah, I've not worked in my office for 16 months. So
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like that's a wrap. There's no other questions. If there are any other questions that come about, please contact me. And if you have a question and you're not really sure who to contact me. That is my job within the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, and I can direct you to who might have a better clue of how to assess your question. Thank you all very much for attending tonight. This has been great, and I hope it's been helpful. And again, look for all of those resources we were mentioning sometime tomorrow. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks so much. Have a great evening.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.